Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. Thank you for joining the Halal and Travel MIHAS 2021, hosted by CrescentRating and MIHAS. We are glad to be back after a year's absence. I'm Raudha Zaini, Strategic Partnerships and Projects Lead at CrescentRating and HalalTrip, and I'll be moderating the session today. We appreciate that you're taking the time to join us today. We're excited to be having this session with our panelists. If you have any questions, do drop them in the Q&A tab throughout this session. So now on to our topic for today. The topic is Muslim women travelers. Objectives are to discuss the rising trend of Muslim women travelers that up until the pandemic was in a growth phase. So no, the pandemic has undeniably affected this, and we would like to hear from Muslim women travelers themselves about how travel was for them before, how it has affected them, and how it may change in a post-pandemic environment. So in a summary, that's our objective for today's discussion. So I'll go ahead and briefly briefly introduce each of our panelists before handing it over to them to share a little bit more about themselves and their organization. So first up, we have Samia Omar Bwana, founder and director of Halal Safaris Africa, a travel company that aims at providing tailored safaris and tourism services in Africa that are family and also Muslim friendly. Next, I'd like to introduce Amirah Syamimi and Acacia Diana, co-founders of Women Travelers Malaysia, a community that promotes education and safety amongst traveling Malaysian women. Now, perhaps Samia, you can share a little bit more about what you do at Halal Safaris Africa.
Thank you so much, Raudha. It's nice to meet you all, my fellow panelists, and I'm greatly excited about this opportunity because to share a little bit about what I do. Africa for many people hasn't been known for halal travel and Muslim travel, and it's been on the fringes of the Muslim travel market. I think people only know South Africa in the Muslim travel market, and so I started Halal Safaris about 2.5 years ago. For this particular reason, I'm from Kenya, specifically from Lamu in Kenya, which is a Muslim majority community. And years of seeing that despite having all the amenities for Muslim travelers, we have mosques every corner, we have halal food everywhere in Lamu, which is my hometown, and majority Muslim population, but yet Muslims wouldn't primarily be the main tourists who come there. We'd have many from the Western travelers. And so after realizing and experiencing Turkey and Malaysia, actually, I did my training in Islamic Tourism Center in Malaysia. After that, and getting that introspection as a Muslim, that what would I want if I was visiting my own country? So I started Halal Safaris. Specifically, first it was for Kenya, but then in realizing that the market was really new and not every tourist wants to just come to Kenya. They also want to go to Tanzania or sometimes to South Africa. So I slowly started branching out and have partners. And my main product, actually, the most popular product is called the Sisters Safari, which is very relevant to this forum. Sister meaning not just those who are born sisters, but in Islamically we call each other sisters, or my fellow Muslim sister. And so the Sister Safari, we started as the first ever halal women-only group travel in Africa, but we started with Kenya and with Tanzania. And then COVID hit 1 year after founding the company, and here we are today online and trying to see how people can travel in a very innovative space and still be safe. Then thank you so much again for the opportunity. I look forward to telling more to the audience.
Thanks, Samia. I think a lot of us can resonate, especially with how our different brands actually managed to overcome or actually pivot during these difficult times. Mimi and Acacia, would you like to share a little bit more about what you do at Women Travelers Malaysia?
Hi, hello. Thanks so much for having us. Nice to meet you, Raudha and Samia. Hi, so Women Travelers Malaysia, we're actually quite new. We started this year in the middle of the pandemic. Our main objective was to basically gather all of these young female Malaysian travelers who are basically now, due to COVID, stuck at home. So I'm Acacia, and that's Mimi. We started off as students who were studying abroad, and we traveled a lot. And then when we went back to Malaysia after our graduation, we also enjoyed traveling. Malaysia's passport is one of the best passports in the world to travel with, so we took great advantage of that. So then when COVID hit, obviously us and a lot of our friends were sort of grounded at home, and we decided to just start as a sort of it started as a sort of support group for all of these girls to just get together, pool knowledge, and make friends and talk about our travel experiences. And as we established ourselves in January this year, and we've done so many programs, mostly to promote safety and education amongst female Malaysian travelers. Yeah.
Yeah. And things are going pretty well so far, where it's only been a year, I would say, our community, and it's been growing pretty well, I would say. And during the whole COVID period of time when we were on lockdown, especially in Malaysia, we were quite surprised how the girls, Malaysian girls, are very participating into our community, and we've done a lot of events with them, and we can see that most of them really want to travel, and they were really, really excited when we share about our experience. We even call out a certain audiences and other followers to share the experience living abroad, how was the pandemic during in their country. So it was really a good sharing session with them, I would say.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of the content that you create on social media is also really interesting, and we're really looking forward to unpack that whole kind of conversation about why it's important to have a community, and I can something that I can really relate to as well. So thank you, ladies. Look forward to a really exciting discussion. We have a few questions, but I imagine this would be a really interactive session. So feel free to interject and share your views at any time during this session. So let me start. Given the topic of Muslim women travelers, and given the new travel in this whole post-pandemic environment, in 2019, at CrescentRating, we developed a report with MasterCard called Muslim Women Travel Report. Till then, little to no research has been done on the subject of Muslim women travelers. So what we aim to do with the report actually is to deep dive into their motivations, their trip behaviors, their motivations for travel, and in doing so, evaluate the potential for Muslim women travelers for destinations and businesses. Now, at that time, this segment was in a growth phase. So it was a really big segment, part of the Muslim traveler segment. It is important, that we acknowledge the impact the pandemic has had on the industry, and particularly the growth of this segment as well. And as we are aware, women are the most impacted during these tough times, be it at work or at home. We know that some of the predictions that we had during the time of doing the report may not remain the same in the new travel climate, and we do not have all the answers yet. But what we will try to do today is to try and frame the discussion around this and see if what we knew about Muslim women travelers pre-pandemic might and could have and could change post-pandemic. So first of all, maybe to get the ball rolling, a question: How do you feel Muslim women traveler needs have or will change? And more importantly, what will be the key concerns of Muslim women travelers in a post-pandemic environment? Perhaps I'll direct the question to Samia.
Thank you. I think that's a good question. First of all, there's the personal experiences, because we ourselves fit that category as Muslim women travelers. And realizing that reflects the same experiences as our target audience, our clients. I think the biggest feedback is give an example of the Sister Safari for the women's group trips. Muslim women travelers tend to like traveling together. Very few solo women travelers. But at the same time, that is the most affected segment of travelers. Organizing group trips with strangers is now even more difficult. The risk of strangers giving each other COVID, the difficulty in maintaining strict social distancing amongst strangers. With family, it's easy. Group trips, family who know each other, you can take a risk. And so unfortunately, for example, for us, we had to cancel our sister safari for the year. And realizing so many of our previous clients were now saying, well, we'll have to wait till your next trip, because those are the trips they used to utilize in order to travel. That is the one biggest impact that I've seen with COVID. Another one is because women tend to travel with family and with our children and our husbands and our grandparents. So because of that, the interconnection between travelers and that responsibility we have as mothers as well, for those who travel with their children, towards what risk are you putting your child in, or what risk are you putting your parents in, we take it a little bit more personal. And so I've noticed a lot of previously women travelers, including myself actually, who've reduced the frequency of their trips, who've reduced their group trips. But interestingly, what I've seen happen now is there's a lot more mobilization of travel, in the good way. Mobilization in that before, if you're just a solo travel, you're going to stick to solo travel. But having that consideration with one another, where I've had girls say, well, I don't want to, I would have wanted to register for your trips, but because I can't, I've mobilized 4 friends to register for our own trip. So there's a lot more incentive to mobilizing friends to travel together, because you're afraid of being with strangers, than before. And a lot more personal responsibility people are taking into, rather than waiting for a group trip to be announced, is actually creating your own trips.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear from Muslim, women travelers from Malaysia, from your audience, Mimi and Acacia. What are some of the concerns that they have brought up, like what Samia has shared? I think the main concern would be security and hygiene concerns. So traveling with people that you are more familiar with, you trust, you feel a lot safer, especially in this current climate. What are some of the concerns that you have heard from women?
Thank you, Raudha, and thank you for letting us to give our opinion on this. I completely agree on this. And in addition, in these challenges, managing the Muslim travelers, we as a Muslim travelers, we face a number of challenges, and these challenges are closely related to our religion or our belief in as an identity. So, and I agree with you as well, where hygiene and safety is one of the most important part. As a Malaysian or an Asian, we have this rule whereby we are not allowed to travel when we were young. So we tend to go in a small group. And then with this also, this challenge also will give us the societal expectation and norms. And there is a social stigma that Muslim women should not be traveling without a male guardian. And due to the different opinions among scholars and the permissibility of Muslim women traveling on their own, those who choose to do in so many ways from others, I would say. And also, we just found out as well on some research that we've been going through that Muslim women travelers who wears hijab, they tend to have a higher risk of discrimination and prejudice due to visibly Muslim appearances. So there are times I actually have a few of my friends, they had to remove their hijab when they travel so that they won't be discriminated from. So those are kind of the challenges and issues that we were trying to help our Muslim travelers to overcome with when they travel. I would say that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mimi. I think what we need to those are comments are actually very similar to the comments we had when we were doing the report back in 2019. There are also Muslim women in parts of the world where not only feel like their identity, not because they're just Muslim, but also they have their identity, their race, their color, the skin color. So it adds a different layer of difficulty when they're traveling. And what's interesting is that not many people realize that within the Muslim women traveler segment itself, there are so many different types of profiles. You don't only have people who travel for leisure. You have women who travel for business. You have women, family travelers. You have this vast spectrum of types of Muslim travelers, Muslim women travelers that travel for different reasons, and these are just some of the concerns that they have. And for sure, faith-based concerns is what really differentiates us from general women traveler population. In that sense, what are some of from the conversations that you've had with travelers themselves and your personal experience? What are some of the things that you feel destinations and businesses can improve on, or how can they better cater to Muslim women travelers, in the new normal? Perhaps Samia?
I was going to ask, is it is it open? Do we put our hands up? Yeah, I think, and also to add on to the previous question, I just thought of something that, the quarantine, this concept of quarantining in another country has really changed a lot of things, and in terms of not just in changing on whether to travel or not, but where to travel to. And the number one people who plan trips are actually women. We tend to be the ones who plan, even if our husbands end up traveling or our fathers, we do most of the planning. And it's interesting to see that even that processing of researching places or countries that don't have quarantine. And I've seen an increasing number of people traveling to Kenya because there's no quarantine requirement, and versus other countries. So that has changed. I wanted to add to the last question. And then to your current question on what institutions, hotels, or other providers can do. And there's a lot to be done. But just to clarify, it's actually the bare minimum. There's this fear that catering to Muslims, or especially Muslim women, can be really difficult because, the assumption is we need our own room, we need our own privacy in restaurants, we must have a private pool that's only swum by women, it must be enclosed. There's these assumptions. So I think the first thing that institutions need to do is understand our needs. That's the first step. And I think the GMTI, the index that CrescentRating has developed, was really useful. And I've actually used it a lot in some of our interactions with hotels, coming into the industry and realizing that it's hard to market to Muslim travelers, especially Muslim women travelers, if the hotels don't understand the market. And so even if we're a tour company, we had to spend more time being like a consultancy company, advising people, teaching them or hotels what they need to do. And I think with the partnership we've had with CrescentRating and the excellent research that's been done, it's been the most helpful. Summing it up, I think even in 2019, when CrescentRating started now, specifying more about women issues, it became even easier, because before that it was all Muslims, but understanding that Muslims are different, but we need very minimal. And I think after that, understanding our needs as a main step, catering to them becomes very easy. We don't need that much more than what the Muslim men do. The only uniqueness in us is that we are a visible minority. We are a visible tourist that it's easy to know how to treat them differently. So it should become actually easier for hotels. Because a Muslim man, you might mistakenly give him, if he's not wearing hijab, that is, which he wouldn't be, but for a Muslim man, it's very easy to mistakenly give him, pork, or mix his food with alcohol. Maybe his cake was made. It's very easy to do that. But for Muslim women who do cover up, it should be easier to tell that they're Muslim, and therefore treat them in the way that they need. Make sure that their food doesn't get contaminated. Make sure you ask them if they want a time in the pool that is private. You don't necessarily have to do it, but you can at least ask and show that you care. And I think that's the first step. And understanding that the second thing to Muslims is understanding that we're very diverse. Even in this panel, you can see we're very diverse in ethnicity and race, in how we choose to express our deen, our Islam. There are those who wear niqab and those who don't. So being open to that and understanding the diversity of women, I think, is a step. Doing the other things, providing halal food and providing a prayer mat and providing water in the bathroom, those are really minor compared to actually just treating them like human beings and treating us like we are equal pairs in this hotel and deserve just as much service.
Right, I completely agree with you. I think it's really important to have an open line of communication with whoever that you're attracting to your destination, be it if you're attracting travelers from a different market, and Muslim women travelers just happen to be a segment, a leading segment, of leading the way in the growth of the Muslim traveler segment. So I think it's important to kind of have an open line of communication with the travelers themselves. Speak to industry experts, understand how exactly you can cater to this, the needs, the faith-based needs, and the requirements of this segment. Essentially, I think Muslim women travelers will really go anywhere and everywhere that they feel welcomed, and it's really not about having to do a complete overhaul of your current existing structure or your services. You can just kind of build on, do a bit of changes, be a bit more flexible. Like what Samia says, it's not about having a pool just dedicated for Muslim women. It's having maybe a different time slot for them to go and be a bit more comfortable, and a bit more less burden when they actually go and swim, for instance. So these are just maybe some examples that I have come across when speaking to Muslim women travelers. Maybe Acacia, what are some of, as a Muslim woman traveler yourself, what are some of your personal experience that you have come across that you feel destinations can better cater to the requirements?
I just want to touch as well before I answer the question that I completely agree with Samia's previous point that Muslim women travelers nowadays are more mobile. Like, we are more open to new experiences. We are more willing and we are more independent, especially now with technology. Organizing our own itineraries is so much more accessible, and all over the world, I think we see that trend picking up where Muslim women travelers are taking agency in how they conduct their own holidays, whether it's with friends or with families. And besides that, people are more interested in experiences rather than certain types of activities or programs. Like, people want to embrace the destination as a whole rather than follow a certain, strict itinerary like how people used to travel back in the day. For me, myself, one of the main concerns that I have faced as a Muslim traveler, just like Samia mentioned earlier, for me, it has been I'm slightly less visible as a Muslim woman due to the fact that I'm not practicing wearing the niqab, but there are still certain perceptions that are just ingrained in the general global society, whereby generally Muslims are perceived to be a very the narrative on us is quite volatile. Like, in certain countries in the West, especially, there are still certain rules imposed on wearing the niqab. With unrest in the Middle East, people have perceived the people of our religions as to be refugees or even terrorists. It is a fact that is true, and it's a fact that as Muslim travelers, you have to understand that certain countries and certain societies will have that perception on you. So it is immensely important for citizens of other Muslim countries to advocate for our positive values, like values of respect, values of tolerance, of peace. And when we travel, we are sort of ambassadors of our religion as well. We have to communicate these values to the larger world and put our foot down, and share that, that how we travel is not as how the media perceives us. And there are so many examples of how, successful stories of Muslim practices in tourism. For example, the World Tourism Forum is headed by, the Turkish delegation, which is a Muslim country. Destinations like Dubai is doing so well in promoting and branding the destination as a very desirable Muslim destination. So I think we have to look up to all of these examples of Muslim pioneered or Muslim destinations to show the world that, it can be a very desirable way of travel and places to travel. And we have to collectively address the general global narrative on us that is very volatile right now.
Yeah, and I think on the topic of destinations that are kind of like leading the way in that sense, I really think a lot of destinations are non-Muslim majority destinations. You know, you think about Japan, you think about South Korea, they're doing so much in really catering to the Muslim travel segment in general. You see a lot of facilities available. They have come a long way since way back when, you know, when halal food was really difficult to find. Now you could find prayer places, you know, really easily in very popular parts of Japan. You know, that sort of case studies or destinations are really important because and they also get a lot of traffic, you know, from Muslim majority countries like Malaysia, Indonesia. So that really is, I think, it shows a lot about, you know, if you're able to cater your services to this market, you will really get the benefit of these numbers and these travelers coming in from this part of the world. Thank you, ladies. I think that's really informative. And
Can
I
I
think
add
moving
something?
on.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add, we tend to also, as Muslim travelers, also think that it's institutions that also have to, or even as institutions think that it's institutions that have to change. But we forget that we as Muslims have to be the first example of that, of accommodating Muslim
Yeah.
women. And one of my strongest and most difficult experiences in travel is how mosques are not accommodative to women. That I would be traveling and I want to go and pray, and then it's a men-only mosque. It's not prayer room. So I think even before all the other institutions and talking about what other people can be accommodative, how can we as Muslims accommodate the women who are practicing, who are Muslim women travelers? And that to me stands out as a first step to be an example to others. And at the same time, also for the institutions, realizing that Muslim women are just a minority that's leading the way because we're visible. We're a visible minority. But catering to Muslim women opens up the doors for catering to everyone else. I need a private time to swim as much as any non-Muslim woman who has maybe body self-esteem issues. I might need a private swimming space the same way an autistic child who's afraid of noise and afraid of too much disruption in the pool needs it. So when we start considering ourselves or Muslim women as just an example of other minorities who have not been catered to in the tourism industry, then it will maybe make prejudiced hotels less biased, prejudiced countries less biased into accommodating Muslim women or Muslim travelers.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry.
Yeah, I completely agree as well. And it is just breaking down barriers whereby the values and the facilities that we are seeking is not completely alien. It is facilities that can benefit other segments as well, not just Muslim women. For example, like I think all of us can relate to like when we travel with a group with men, when it's time for prayers, the men can just put a mat down somewhere and just take wudu and just do it. Whereas as women, we would need a bit more sort of a private space, and we require more cloths to pray with, perhaps, and just providing some safe space for cleanliness that has tap water and a clean floor in any public space in the world will not only just benefit Muslim women but benefit other people who have health concerns, who have like cleanliness concerns or privacy concerns. I think that is just like a very basic facility that can be provided in any way for multiple use.
I agree as well. And in my experience, there was one time I was in an airport and I wanted to pray. So this particular airport, they actually catered a prayer room, not just for Muslim, but to all kind of religion as well. So in that way, I can think that if they can help us as a Muslim, they will also help the other religions. So it's a win-win situation for everyone. Will be a good business as well in tourism and traveling. So
Yeah, for sure. I think it's called multi-faith prayer rooms in a lot of the
Yes.
airports that you can
Yes.
find. And I think we're completely fine with it, sharing that space. And I think an important, I think going back to Samia's point about prayer places and mosques, I think we're very privileged in this part of the world in Asia where it's very clearly demarcated, signs for the Muslimah, for men and for women to pray. There is also a very private space to, take your wudu, take your ablution. But I was very surprised when I was traveling to, other parts of the world where it was not very clear. And when I found out that, there is no space for a woman to just do your prayers like at any time of the day that you want, I was really surprised. I was like confused, surprised, a lot of emotions. And that also are some of the concerns and a lot of the women that we interviewed in the report have raised. Having just, not just a private space, but also a clean space, having the same sort of a level of care that has been given to, the main prayer space also in their space. That's really important. And I think our discussion is getting really interesting now, but we're towards the end of it. I think let me try and squeeze in a few more questions. I think touching a little bit more on, I think Mimi and Acacia, I think on Women Travelers Malaysia, I think these are really interesting, community that you have created. I'm sure there are a lot of reasons why you created it, which we have shared earlier. But how important is it, to establish and unite a community in empowering and educating and inspiring Muslim female travelers, especially as you see in Malaysia right now?
I think, like, more than anything now, especially with the pandemic, there is so much confusion. There is so much there's so much uncertainty, and like people do not know who to turn to and where to go to get guidance on how to proceed with traveling, especially. I mean, obviously in education, in restaurants, in food and beverage and everything, but in tourism and in activities, outdoor activities especially, people are waiting for a sign on how they can do that, on how they can start going there and how it's going to be now. And to be completely honest, there is not a lot of resources nowadays, because even the global tourism community is trying to figure out all the SOPs and all the measures of how we as a community can develop our tourism goals. But undeniably, we know that when it opens, it's going to be amazing. Like, people are just going to start traveling. As soon as borders open, people are going to go out. So this is also one of the reasons why we established Women Travelers Malaysia. More than anything, it is a support group of female travelers who can raise our personal concerns. And we did a poll recently during one of our activities, and where we asked our audience of, I think, about almost 200 people who joined, what topics would you like us to discuss more? And a lot of them said, besides tourism destinations, be it domestic or international, they wanted information on safety and finances. And I think those are one of the two main concerns, and that we will be discussing moving on in our events and our talks. And I think it's just basic concerns of people trying to figure out how they can travel after this. So yeah.
Right. Samia, for you, I think it's more of the question is more of, as a brand, as you have founded Halal Safaris Africa, how has the brand really pivoted or diversified your business offerings? Like you said, you had to cancel a couple of trips.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
in the height of how have you kind of pivoted to focus a bit more on other things?
Yeah, well, first of all, realizing, and this has happened to all of us, not just Halal Safaris, that local tourism is your survival, is your core survival. International tourists now are the very minor target audience in the company. That was the biggest shift. We did do a lot of local tourism before, but actually changing our entire marketing, where instead of marketing, take a trip to Masai Mara, now marketing a day trip in Nairobi for those people in Nairobi, in the city, because we actually had a lockdown where in the capital city, which was where the main international airport is, and the capital city in Mombasa, which was the second biggest international airport, the borders were locked. You couldn't leave Mombasa or come into Mombasa. Same for Nairobi. And so we had to diversify and think of what activities can we do for people in Nairobi to do in Nairobi, which is very different from what we're used to. So not just local tourism as in the country, but local tourism even within cities. That we started using a word called workations, where you're working but you're away from your house, because people are frustrated of working from home with their kids and And a lot of hotels also adapted to this, allowing cheaper rates for those who just want to stay in your room. A lot of hotels also added a desk into their room, so it made it easier for us to create workations. And as I said earlier, with the group trips, we unfortunately had to cancel that. But now our responses to our clients became different. Instead of saying, I'm sorry, we don't have a group trip planned, and that's the end of it, we say, well, we don't have a group trip planned, but these are the rates if you want to create your own trips. You need a minimum of X number of people to get this price. So creating a price list or packages that are not based on one specific trip, but that allows somebody to decide, well, should I pick 6 friends or 4 friends, where they can opt for packages that work for them, and maybe give them a deadline, say, you know, this is applicable for X number of months, and allowing them to create their own activities. We've always been a bespoke, tailored company, so we didn't have fixed packages, and I think this was easier for us to navigate too. And the other thing that we did change a lot is we stopped marketing hotels as much as we marketed private villas. And personally, I've always preferred private villas and private houses or apartments. But because of COVID, we really avoided, because I also, my background before Halal Safaris was public health. So I actually had, I was going through all my teachings and saying, oh, I shouldn't be promoting, you know, group trips in a hotel that's, you know, 200 rooms. This doesn't feel right. And so instead, we've actually spent more time researching on houses. You know, Masai Mara has a lot of lodges, for example, but it was really fun discovering the private villas in Masai Mara. They're actually private lodges that I didn't know about prior, that are in different national parks. And so it's becoming also a learning experience for myself, and realizing that tourism is not just about hotels, and Airbnb became successful for a reason. And what made it succeed is what has sustained it till now because of COVID. And so now hotels are adapting and creating private apartments. We are adapting and creating the private villa packages as well. So it's still a learning experience, though. Still a long way to go.
I think it's been a really steep learning curve for all of us. Learning to be agile, learning to be flexible in terms of, I think personally, in our personal life, having to adapt with, you know, this whole environment of working from home, but also professionally in terms of the brand, and also, but I think good things have come out of this situation. I think I would like to think so. For instance, Women Travelers Malaysia, you guys probably, if not for the current situation that we are in now, you would not have founded it. It's been a year old, so I think it's amazing what you have. I think we are running out of time, but I would like to really thank our panelists for their time. Before we end off, I'd like to ask one question to all 3 of you. Maybe you could each share a couple of thoughts before we end the session. So do you think the pandemic will disrupt this trend of Muslim women travelers, or do you think that it will continue to grow and grow even bigger as we emerge from this crisis that we are in?
Can I go first?
Please, yes.
Yeah. Well, I would say that it will definitely grow bigger. As you know, once we're on quarantine and lockdown, I think everyone is so engaged to their phones. Everything nowadays is online. Everything's accessible via your phone. It's all on videos and apps. So I think that as a women Muslim travelers, it will be a lot easier for all of us to be engaged or to contact any of our girls around the world. And it will definitely help on the tourism. And also we will also help each other. Like Samia said, it will help our sisters.
Yeah, I think everybody being home now has just opened up platforms like more time for people to communicate, to share knowledge, to get more insights, to basically regroup. And like I mentioned earlier, I think once the borders are open and with all of this newfound knowledge, newfound network, newfound contacts, newfound insights, it will be a very positive change.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I definitely think it will still grow, maybe not at the same curve or as fast as it was, but what will change is the tools that we use, and that demographics going out there, the age of the women going out there, and demographics. The tools. One of them is using travel agents, and I know I'm a travel agent. I'm not trying to promote myself, but instead getting information on what are the COVID requirements, where can I get a COVID test in that country when I need to go back. Those are not things you easily get off the internet, and it requires working with local institutions. And I've seen an increasing number of people push towards using a travel agent instead of going online, because they're missing their COVID test, missing their flights because their tests didn't come back in time. And this is what's really changing, what I've seen a lot.
That's great. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you for your time. We also like to thank the audience for your time, and we hope you have benefit from this session greatly. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. Assalamualaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you.
Salam. Thank you.
Salam.